Hey everybody, I really want to thank you for the questions and comments you've been posting on our YouTube channel. And a lot of those questions have to do with neighbor noise, specifically neighbor noise that's coming through the building structure. And believe me, I can totally relate to this issue. Sometimes you have neighbors who make noise from their apartment and it's very loud in your apartment. And maybe you try to talk to them about it and they don't believe you. Or they don't want to change anything about their living space or their habits. Or maybe you've looked for support from your landlord or building management and they're not helping. So this is actually pretty common. I've been in that situation too. It's challenging because you just want to find an easy way to block their noise, especially if they don't want to help. But sometimes it might be really expensive or even unrealistic to try to build something in your apartment to block the noise that's coming from your neighbor's apartment. That's because usually the best way to stop most noise is at the source and not at the receiving end. But if your neighbor doesn't want to participate in finding a solution, you're a bit stuck. So what do? One possible way to address this is to find a professional mediator. And Soundproofist did a podcast with some professional noise mediators in Ireland to find out what they do and how they do it, because this might be something you want to pursue. So I'm going to share a couple of excerpts from our conversation here. The full version of this podcast is audio only, and you can listen to it through a podcast service like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or on our website. But for now, here's an excerpt of our conversation that we had over Zoom with Roísin O'Shea and Shane Dempsey. They're from ARC Mediation Services in Ireland.
But what we do at the very beginning, whether it's a noise dispute between neighbours or whether it's the breakdown of a marriage, we approach it in the same way. And so what we do is we do individual intake sessions with the parties. And sometimes there's more than two, especially neighbour disputes, there can be more than two. Yeah. So what we do is we meet each one on their own so that we can hear chronologically what has happened. And we keep it chronological because it helps people, because when people are upset, they bounce. They'll go 10 years back, they'll go, they jump and jump and jump. So
when you get them to tell that story, an amazing thing happens. They start, if you keep them sequential, they start to realize that they have actually been reactive, that they are caught in a dance, a set of negative, self-reinforcing patterns. And they only get that, I think, by someone like us bringing them to that story. What do you think, Roísin?
Break it down into bite-sized chunks. Because if you try and sort out the whole problem on day one, it's too big. It's like Shane said, people are carrying too much baggage emotionally. So even a simple thing like a neighbour dispute, which really is not very simple because it breaks our piece of how we live.
Yeah.
But people come in with all of the angst and all of the energy and all of the moments and all the perceived how many times they heard noises over perhaps the last 2 years or 3 years, to take one little piece at a time, break down that one little piece, gather information around it, get the facts in first, and then have a factually based conversation about what actually is happening. And also acknowledge what is emotionally happening, because they can actually be two completely separate things.
Right.
As Shane said, the causation may not actually be the noise, it could be something else. And so what you're trying to do is search and find.
I think that what mediation provides is a way for people who are entrenched in a dispute, who are concerned about the loss of face if they admit that they're wrong, to have a kind of an informal discussion or a dialogue about maybe we could get over this. And that's really what the mediator is providing, the possibility of peace. Not a guarantee, but the possibility, So it's an interesting job to be in. I sometimes say it's a bit like I'm still an engineer. I'm just a relationship engineer, a relationship mechanic.
And I think what we found when we gather the facts first and we ask people to not jump to solutions, because when they come to see us, if we stick to the neighbour dispute space, there's two types of neighbour mediation that we do. There's private disputes and there's disputes, we call them local authority. You probably say local government housing disputes, so it'd be the state. And they're two different spaces because the state properties are usually in poorer condition than private homes. Acoustic problems because of the way the buildings are structured.
Right.
Don't can lend itself to noise.
Well, one of the articles that we have on the Soundproofist website, the most popular article is about neighbor noise and little things you can do. And I think the concept of that was to kind of, again, we talked about sort of a no fault kind of situation where you have housing, and this is certainly true in the United States also, is simply not built to standards that would actually prevent noise from traveling like that. I actually think sometimes older housing, I don't know, like Germany, for example, I've been in homes in Germany that are like fortresses, but we have a lot of wood frame housing here, and it is just like acoustic guitars,
resonant, highly resonant.
Very resonant.
Transmissive.
And so people are living their normal lives in these homes, and they're probably deeply shocked when a neighbor approaches them and says, you're making too much noise. And they might think, I'm just like cooking dinner, but they're opening and closing their cabinets, for example, and it sounds like, what is that? Bang, 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 bang. And it's just they're opening and closing drawers and cabinets. And so I think that sort of increasing awareness of like, oh, you can still do that, but maybe put these little soft pads on the inside of your cabinet doors, for example. That article is about those kinds of things of like just nobody is trying to harass you, and you're not trying to harass anyone else. There are these little things you can do for less than $5, that might help.
That is the kind of thing. That's exactly. We talked to them about putting little sound pieces on the doors, just little rubber things that really inexpensive that will stop that really loud banging. Yeah, I think you're right. The great way of dealing with this is to, if you can find out factually that the divider wall is poor quality, if you find that out fairly quickly, you can say to both parties, look, this isn't your fault. This is actually a construction issue. So your life, you're telling us you're going about your life like a normal person. So you're not deliberately trying to do this. And when you communicate that to the other person, to say, look, we've talked to them and they're really not deliberately trying to do anything. However, we've learned that your partition wall is particularly bad. So here are the things you could both do. And that's something that we do. Two houses get going to think about what can we do to reduce the aggravation we're causing to the other person on our side of the wall.
Yeah. So you make it a common interest. You make it a common project they collaborate on to fix the noise problem. And then you got to tailor that to the budget that they have. Like we used to have like entirely block built houses, and Ireland loves their brick houses. Well, let's say about 1999 and 2006, 2007, when the economy then started to tail, and we all know the credit crunch and whatever. Those houses were built to a different standard. They were fast built timber homes, semi-detached, so one partition wall, and those are the houses that we would see a lot of, let's say, problems with, because the building codes that specified the sound transmission class only came around in 2014, and so you had this best endeavors from 1999 until and so there are thousands of houses around now. Thousands doesn't sound like a big number, but we're not a big country. We're only 5 million people. There's a lot of houses, and basically, they all have these problems. So, like, an accommodation needs to be come to, and the other fascinating thing that they did was there was a trend for wood floors. So you've got that wall, and then you got the residents to the wall, and then you got the wood floors on either side, and it's a recipe for disaster. It's not the residents' fault.
I've also got a few links to help you find some mediation services to deal with your neighbor issues. There's ARC Mediation Services, the International Mediation Institute, mediate.com, and if you want to hear the entire Soundproofist episode with Roísin and Shane, go to this Soundproofist page. Or just use your favorite podcasting service and look for Soundproofist episode 23. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this helpful.